All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the world famous Prospect Avenue podcast. I am your host, Kris Baker, here in my very beautiful office. I'm joking, of course. I called this place uninspiring last week. It is what it is. But I'm calling it beautiful because I'm feeling inspired this week. Had a lot of sleep this week. Fell asleep during the second drive of the Bills game on Sunday night against Cincinnati. Woke up around midnight and quickly realized it was probably great that I fell asleep. Got a good like 8.5, 9 hours of sleep Sunday into Monday. And here we are on Monday, November 6th, late at night, recording episode 10 of Prospect Avenue. Yes, lucky you. You've got me to do 10 of these. But we're going to keep it short tonight. 30 minutes is always the target. I'm going to try to stick around there. And in order to hit that 30-minute mark, I'm just going to jump right in, not talk about the Bills. Everyone else can do that. And I'll be talking about the Sabres every week on the Baker Fairburn show, myself and the Athletics, Matthew Fairburn, getting together weekly to do a podcast. Please subscribe to that on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, a couple other places. We're pretty much everywhere. If you don't see us on your place of choice, let me know and we'll get it there. But we're going to jump right in, start this week, and we have to talk about Jiri Kulich, people. Jiri Kulich, 9 goals through his first 10 AHL contests this year, tied for the AHL lead, goals in 4 straight games. This is a player that Kevin Adams deemed untouchable last year at the trade deadline, and we are certainly seeing why. If we didn't see it last year to end the season, we're definitely seeing it now. And we'll talk a little bit about the goals and the crazy, just torrid stretch that he's been on in a minute, because I really want to highlight what's been really important in Kulich's development this year, and it's just his improved two-way play. He's just taken fewer shifts off this year. Seth Appert really charged he and Isak Rosén to be more play drivers this year for the Amherst. He wants to lean on them in critical situations, and he's doing just that this year. Kulich is seeing a lot more situations, rounding out his resume, and he'll be up at some point this season. Probably sooner rather than later, especially if he keeps scoring like this. It's going to be hard for the Sabres to ignore. This is a guy that can help on the power play, and he can do some good things with the puck. But the fact that he's playing better and it's noticeable, I think it's really encouraging for a 19-year-old player to be seeing this. It's more than just goals with him. So the Sabres will inevitably need him this year, either by merit or just due to injuries. We'll see him up. Don't exactly know when. And, I know that some people found it curious that the Sabres looked to Brandon Biro and Lukas Rousek first for their recalls this year. And I'm not going to go hard on this topic at all, but, we have to remember that the Sabres are always evaluating the full body of work. So that's, what they saw from Rousek and Biro last season, the two-way readiness that those players showed in training camp this year and in preseason, both were good. They've been consistent as well to start the year in Rochester. And so those guys, I think, completely earned the recalls, while a player like Kulich just kept working. And work he has. He's definitely put the work in. I mentioned last week, I thought that the line of Kulich between Matthew Savoie and Isak Rosén was playing really well, with and without the puck in the past couple of weeks, especially since Savoie's been down there. Those 3 young players, they were talking a lot to each other on the bench, helping each other out. They earned the critical minutes that they've been getting late in games. And it was really good to see them play good defensive hockey. I mean, when they didn't have the puck and it was time to put on their defensive hats, they put it on there to win pucks back and enable themselves as a trio to do what they do best, and that's create offense and get on the attack. And on that note, Kulich was a big part of that. He's been a big part of that. I mean, he made a nice play on Saturday in the neutral zone using an active stick to start a play to go in and set up a goal. And he had the favor returned to him later on. But I thought that that's, important to know because those aren't things that we are necessarily seeing from Kulich last year. We're seeing just more consistency from him. I think that's like the biggest takeaway that I have from the first 10 games of the Amerks schedule this year as it relates to Jiri Kulich is I can only think of maybe one game this year so far that we didn't. Came away from that game saying, maybe we didn't get Kulich's best. And I think you can get away with that, if you show up for 9 or 10 games, especially as a 19-year-old. Last year it was kind of inconsistent, shift to shift and game to game. He figured it out as the season progressed, but it took him a little bit of time. But this is kind of what we're seeing here is just development. This is a classic case of development. No games off. I don't want to sound like Bill Belichick, but that's kind of important that these young players need to learn that because that's what it's going to take to hold a job down when you get to the NHL and get big minutes when you make it up there. So I think he's been really consistent this year. I go back to last season. He was 18 years old. He was drafted. He was laser focused on making the NHL. And I think he was a little disappointed when he got sent down to Rochester, but then he got down there and he figured out like pretty quickly, like, whoa, this is a really good league. And he got committed to becoming a very good AHL player. And we certainly saw that after, he got his game ramped up last year in December, went to World Juniors, lit it up, came back, and he was just lights out. I think the physicality of the playoffs last year really helped Jiri Kulich prepare for the season and have been a contributing factor to the hot start that he's gotten off to. Not just the goals, but just everything else rounding out his resume. I think that was really important. That's why it's important to get the farm club in to those pressure situations in the playoffs. Just the intensity ratchets up and they can key in on him and he has to fight through. And he did. He had 7 goals in 12 playoff games last year. But I think that really was a useful tool for him that has set him up as well for the season that he's having. But, look, we're not trying to make Kulich something that he's not. I'm talking about his play off the puck just because it's been noteworthy and you're noticing it when you watch the games. He needed to keep showing that improvement, but look, it's not like the Sabres are waiting for him to become this perennial Selke candidate, before calling him up. That's not the case. It helps bring him up with confidence, but he's here to score goals. And that's what he's doing. Like I said, 9 goals in his first 10 games. He's firing at a 30% success rate right now. And 9 goals on 30 shots. I don't know if that's sustainable, but what's really cool is that of those 9 goals, 7 have come at even strength. So it's not like he's just loading up on the power play. Scored a really awesome shootout goal as well on Saturday against Syracuse. Both he and Philip Cederquist got the shootout markers to secure that victory over the Crunch on the road. But he's shooting more and he's scoring more. So he's averaging 3 shots on goal per game. That's up from the 2.55 that he averaged last year. And he's just been on a tear, man. I mean, 9 in his first 10 this year. I mentioned that he had 7 in the 12 playoff games last year. So this was a guy, he's got 16 goals in his last 22 AHL games. That's a pretty big number. But it goes deeper than that. If you go back after the World Juniors last year, just you look at his stretch of games from February 1st to the end of the regular season, he had 17 goals in his final 30 games last year. So all of a sudden, this is a player at 19 years old. He has 33 goals in his last 52 AHL games, including those 12 playoffs. That's a big number. So yes, Kulich is developing. And now that they've gotten their looks, the Sabres have at Biro and Rousek, Kulich's right there in the on-deck circle. He's next in line for his chance. And we know that they're going to need him at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And just a huge, huge development to get him off to this hot start again. It's going to be really hard for the Sabres to ignore this if he keeps going. I mean, I mentioned, a couple episodes ago here on Prospect Avenue, how Derek Roy and Jason Pominville 18 years ago got off to these crazy starts. I think Pominville was 19 goals in 18 games. Kulich's not there yet, but 9 and 10 is pretty damn good. And who knows? I mean, you get another hat trick under his belt while he's down there. And who knows, man, if he keeps scoring at this rate, he could rival that number. Pominville did it, by the way, when he was an older player. He had to go through waivers that year because he was already that deep into his professional career when he went on that crazy pace in that 18 games. So Kulich's doing it as 19 years old. I mean, he's still eligible for the World Juniors. I don't think we're going to see him in the World Juniors this year because for all we know, he could be up contributing to Buffalo's power play by then. Who knows? Needless to say, crazy hot start, but it's more than just the goals and assists for Kulich, and it was worth pointing out. I mentioned that line of Kulich with Rosane and Savoie, and Savoie is a player that I'll talk about a little bit more with Matthew Fairburn this week on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, but just wanted to call him out as well. Savoie, he just completed his 2-week conditioning loan in Rochester, had 2 goals and 3 assists in his 6-game run down there. But it's not just the point production I want to talk about, just like with Kulich. Savoie was playing fast and doing everything right. And he was afforded some extra minutes, I think, just with all the injuries that the Amerks are dealing with. That created more of an opportunity with Savoie, and he got a lot accomplished, in my opinion, in those 6 games down on the farm in that conditioning stint. But the biggest takeaway, and it stood out more when you're watching him in the AHL, he always looked great in the WHL, as he should. He should dominate that level, and he did. But you notice the maturity in Savoie's game really stood out to me. He had a great offseason. He came to training camp in really great shape. You saw it at the Prospects Challenge. He was the best player there on the ice for the Sabres, no doubt about it. And then he had that unfortunate injury. So he had that month layoff after that injury on the Monday, the 18th of September, I think it was, against Pittsburgh. And he just came out firing again, took this opportunity and just ran with it. The maturity in his game, really great details, really good back checking that really stood out the deeper that he got into his 6 games in Rochester. I mean, this is a guy, he skates guilty when he loses a puck. There was a play on Saturday. He had the puck just over the blue line in the offensive zone against Syracuse, and he lost the puck, and he got right on his horse and came back like a ball of fire right down the center of the ice and turned backwards to defend with his back to the goaltender, back to the net, and stopped the scoring opportunity. Little things like that, the details, the team first mentality, the atoning for losing the puck, again, guilty skating, the speed burst that he has, just everything was just top notch. I don't want to oversell it. We'll see what he does. He's going to get some games in Buffalo. I don't think there's any question about that. And he's not going to play, it sounds like, Tuesday against Carolina, but he should get into the lineup shortly thereafter. So if you look at the Sabres schedule, I'm pretty sure that Kulich's going to run up a decent tab of games here going into that first week of December when he could then be cut loose to join Team Canada for their World Junior prep. So looking at the schedule between now and that first week, there's about 14, 15 games that he could be thrown into. And the Sabres could use, all 9 that he could play without burning that year of his entry-level contract. Is it a big deal if he burns his entry-level contract? To me, it's not. But needless to say, I think he's going to get into a significant chunk of those games and then go be cut loose, and they'll figure out what to do once the World Juniors are done, that first week of January. Right now, early indications, if we trust what the practice lines looked like today in his first practice back with the big club, he skated on a line with former Winnipeg Ice teammate Peyton Krebs. They had Rousek and Victor Olofsson rotating in and out of the other wing. So maybe that's a combo that they roll with. Sounds like Savoie will kind of be starting down the lineup a little bit if he is indeed going to play with Peyton Krebs. That's probably good, kind of guard his minutes to get him started. It's going to be a big jump moving from the AHL to the NHL. Could be a good situation for him. But like I said, I think there's about a 14-game chunk or so that is that window for him to break off a bunch of games. So again, I'll be talking more about both Savoie and Kulich this week with my buddy Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic, so be on the lookout for that. Another note real quick on the farm that I wanted to talk about real quick was Olivier Nadeau. Nadeau got into the lineup for his first 3 professional games last week with Rochester and picked up his first goal in his 3rd appearance, and he did it in his normal fashion. This was a guy who scored a ton of goals in the QMJHL just by being around the goal mouth with a stick on the ice, getting tips, getting deflections, cleaning up rebounds. he was again a net front presence. Really, him and Philip Cederquist both were the primary net front guys for the Amerks last week. And it was good to see Nadeau get going. So Félicitations to Olivier Nadeau for his first goal. And what was really kind of cool to call out again, I mentioned how the Amerks have just been dealing with a ton of injuries early in the season. You know, Kizikov's down, Neuchev's down, Brett Murray got dinged up, Brendan Warren's got the broken jaw. They've just been missing guys, and then they were decimated by call-ups with Rousek going up to Buffalo, Brandon Biro going up to Buffalo. So they were just without a bunch of regulars. And Cederquist and Nadeau were on a line together as wings, and between them for the Friday and Saturday games last week was Zach Metza, a defenseman. So Metza just steps in and did whatever was needed to be done, and he played center for the Amerks last week with Cederquist and Nadeau, and it was actually Metza that set up Nadeau for his goal. So that was kind of cool to see too. I love Zach Metza, player that's playing on an AHL contract. He's going to be an important player for Rochester this year, just like he was last year in the playoffs after he finished up his collegiate career at Quinnipiac. And who knows? I mean, this is a guy, super smart player, loves to get involved in the attack, a natural fit really to move up and play forward if you think about it. But would love to see him, get added to the Sabres depth by virtue of signing an NHL contract, but that hasn't happened yet. We'll see what comes. I think there's good things ahead this season for Zach Metza down on the farm. Going to head over real quick and just talk about a couple SHL players in Noah Ostlund and Anton Wahlberg. Both of these players will be joining Sweden this week at the Under-25 Nations event in Czechia. And in the final SHL game leading up to the international break, Anton Wahlberg had a career-high 19 minutes and 6 seconds and logged a season-high 3 shots on goal on Saturday in a 4-2 victory over Airbro. So Malmo's been exceeding expectations. This was a team, I've mentioned it before, they were picked to finish dead last, at least on the odds, the betting odds for the SHL this season. Malmo currently sits in 4th place heading into the international break. So that's a big surprise. What really isn't shocking, actually, is that an 18-year-old Anton Wahlberg is playing such a big role on that team. So holding down a spot there as a second-line winger. I love the speed that he shows for a big guy. He's really good in the corners. I just think he's been really good winning battles on the walls, and he has such great command when he has the puck on the stick. Super confident player. So it just looks fast for a big guy, but he's doing a lot of grunt work. And I think he's set up to have a really good showing here, just playing at that elevated pace in the SHL. He should have a good showing this week when he bumps back down to play against his under-20 peer group with Team Sweden. So Noah Ostlund will be there. He's a lock to play on Sweden's World Junior team. And I think the rock solid start that Anton Wahlberg's gotten off to certainly helps his chances of making the team as well. So Ostlund and Wahlberg are 2 of 14 forwards that Sweden is bringing to the Under-25 Nations event in Czechia. They're going to play 4 games in 4 days. So they're going to start off on Thursday, the 9th against Switzerland, get back Friday against Slovakia. Saturday, the 11th, they will play the host Czechs, and then they're going to close it out on Sunday, the 12th, against rival Finland. So Wahlberg, I think, has a pretty good chance. I've hinted at it where, coming into the season, he wasn't a lock. He had a lot of competition, but there's a couple situations that I think are helping Wahlberg's chances of locking up a roster spot. It's not just this great start that he's off to with Malmo, but, I think a factor here is Leo Carlson. Carlson is currently serving as the first-line center for the Anaheim Ducks, playing over 18 minutes a night. He's getting some power play time on their second unit, and the Ducks might not want to let him go. Ducks are off to a pretty decent start, and Carlson's obviously been a big part of that. There's 2 schools of thought when developing a human being. Do you let him go back and dominate for a month, or do you keep him up and just, keep letting him ramp up? And he's doing really good things. Like I said, 18 minutes a night as an 18-year-old, that's a pretty nice number. So Carlson could stay in the NHL and not go to World Juniors. That helps Wahlberg. I think the other situation is the lengthy injury recovery that Liam Ogren is going through. So he just started skating, Ogren did, with Färjestad been injured all year, hasn't played a game yet. And I don't know if he's going to have enough ramp up time. I guess it depends on when he can get into some games here. But I think Ogren, I can see him actually ramping up quickly and making the team. But the Carlson situation is really the one that I'm eyeballing that could have a direct impact on Wahlberg. But right now, no Ogren this week. Ostlund and Wahlberg will be there again. They're 2 of 14 forwards, so they're going to get a lot of hockey here in the next couple of days on this international break from the SHL. So again, though, with the Carlson and Ogren situations, I don't think that really Wahlberg should just worry about that. He really should just be concerned with the things that he controls, and that's, playing big, going out, being hard on pucks, using his physical gifts to continue making impression here amongst his peer group with his eyes on that World Junior roster. World Junior Championship again. I think you all know it begins the day after Christmas, December 26th. Going to be a big tournament for Sweden this year. They're going to be hosting it on home ice in Gothenburg, Sweden. So that'll be huge for Wahlberg's development if he can make that team, and we think he's got an inside track. And other international news, want to hit on Topias Leinonen real quick, because Leinonen got back on the ice this week. For those watching on YouTube, this is not B-roll. This is actually third period action that Leinonen faced in his return with Jyväskylä's under-20 squad on Saturday. So he got back on the ice skating in recent weeks. He dressed on Friday and then got the start on Saturday. Leinonen made 23 saves on 24 shots in a 2-1 loss to HIFK. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with Leinonen in the next couple of weeks, because he, like the others that I just mentioned, he's a World Junior hopeful as well. He is not part of Finland's roster for the Five Nations event in Czechia, and he's got some work to do because the international break is kind of putting a little, it's a break, right? So JYP, both their under 20 squad and their Liga squad, they don't see game action again until November 15th. So they're going to be off for about a week and a half here. It's going to be interesting to see if Leinonen can get back in with Jyväskylä's Liga squad, or if they get him a few more starts with the under 20 team. Either way, it's really important that he gets going and get some good starts, good quality starts under his belt, because Finland's going to take 3 goaltenders to the tournament. Right now, they're only taking 2 with them this week to the Czech Republic, which leaves a spot open for Leinonen. And if he starts ramping up quickly, and, I thought he looked really good, by the way, in the game that he played on Saturday. He moved well, was confident playing the puck. It was really funny. After the game, he skated over to the refs, said something to him at center ice, and the ref was just like points to the door, like, get the hell out of here, man. It was kind of funny. That kind of makes sense, though, because Leinenen's a pretty goofy guy, pretty chatty. Looks like a guy that always has something to say. But more importantly, the thing that I keep thinking about with Leinonen, and I mentioned this at the time that the news broke that he was going to miss, 6-7 weeks with the injury, was it's going to be really critical for him to take care of his body. Goaltenders, they take a beating. And, it happens younger and younger now. Goaltenders have to pay attention to their flexibility, get stretches in, build up mass, get their lower bodies nice and strong, pay attention to the food they put in their body, the sleep that they get, to just start taking it seriously. And I think with Leinonen, he's a big guy. He carries a lot of weight. He's over 220 pounds. It's going to be really critical for him, if he hasn't been taking it seriously, to really ratchet it up and really start to pay attention to that fitness, his nutrition. It's going to be really important for him. But in the immediate term anyways, want to see how he does, November 15th and beyond. He's really got a good 2-3 weeks to get some good starts under his belt if he's going to be one of those 3 goalies that, in theory, Finland takes with them to Sweden for the World Juniors. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. The nutrition thing, I don't want to be sitting here on a high horse or anything like that. And I'm not suggesting that he doesn't take care of himself. It's just something that it's going to be really important. We've seen other Sabres prospects in the past, going back, 10, 15 years, that had a little bit of a lazy way about them and maybe didn't work as hard as they could in the off seasons. Leinenen's a guy, again, big guy. It's going to be really, really important from him over the next couple of years to take care of himself. So hopefully he's on track to do just that. A couple other notes here before we finish. Again, I only have a few minutes left. I'm going to be creeping up on that 30-minute mark before we know it. Hey, thanks as always, by the way, for tuning in to Prospect Avenue on YouTube and your audio platform. Truly appreciate it. Going to head over to Russia real quick. Kind of an interesting development happened with Prokhor Poltapov last week. A story that I thought was happening really wasn't, and I'll explain that in a second. But on Thursday, CSKA announced their lineup for a game. And it was really cool to see Prokhor Poltapov moved up to the third line. We've been talking about it ad nauseum this year on Prospect Avenue, how it's been important for him to move his way up the lineup and get out of that fourth line role. So he was up on the third line, got a little excited, tweeted it out, tuned into the game, and then he plays just 5 minutes. In the second period, it looked like he was kind of getting into it with Sergei Fedorov. Fedorov, after the game, clarified that he wasn't really yelling at Poltapov, but they were clearly having a discussion about the importance of line changes and shortening shifts and keeping fresh legs on the ice. They were playing in a rivals arena. It was very loud. So Fedorov was saying, it wasn't, don't make anything that it's not. I had to speak loudly because we were in a loud, hostile environment. Okay, I get it. But it was kind of funny that he only played 5 minutes in that game. And then Sunday comes, and I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch the game, and I look, and Poltapov was not in the lineup. So I'm like, great, going back to bed. He's probably being benched. Something, maybe Fedorov wasn't telling the truth about whatever that discussion was. But Fedorov addressed it after the game. He said, look, Poltapov was just being rested. Let's not make anything of this. This is a guy, he played 20 consecutive games, going back to his stint that he had in the Supreme League, and then came back up, and he's been playing minutes in CSKA's lineup. So I'm glad that I kind of waited to kind of speak about it. I believe Sergei Fedorov, but I will be seeing if Poltapov's in the lineup when they get back in action on Tuesday of this week to see if that's definitely the truth. But clearly, Poltapov just needed a rest day, but again, thought it was peculiar, was really excited that he was moved up to the third line in the game on Thursday, then only played 5 minutes. Didn't make sense. So whatever the case, we'll be monitoring the situation. But look, I think at the end of the day, this is all part of the process for Poltapov. He's a young player on a veteran team. He's going to need rest days. I get it. He's committed, though, Poltapov is, to finishing out his contract. So that's this year and next. Poltapov has said that he wants to be an NHL player, but he wants to be a polished, finished product and really prepared for the task of North American hockey when he does make the leap. So, like I said, it's all part of the process. Hopefully he gets back into the lineup on Tuesday, and maybe they'll put him back in that third line role. We'll see. But needless to say, I just keep thinking about Poltapov, and the reason that I keep wanting to call out how he has to move up the lineup eventually and get up there and prove his value to Sergei Fedorov is that Poltapov always references names like Kaprizov and Panarin as guys that were major impact players in the KHL before they came over to the NHL. And if that's what he has in his mind, well, he better start working his way up the ladder in CSKA's lineup. That's why I put such an emphasis on it. But anyways, whatever. We'll be watching what happens both this week and beyond to see if he does indeed begin that climb and hold this place down higher up in the lineup. So more to come on that. A few other quick hits on some players before we end it this week. I think the hottest player in the Sabres prospect ranks, not named Jiri Kulich, might be Matteo Costantini of the Western Michigan Broncos. Costantini came out last week and scored twice, 2 goals at the doorstep in their weekend set against Omaha. So Costantini now has goals in 3 straight games and has 6 points on that 3-game point streak. So he's really ramping up nicely there as Western Michigan's second line centerman. And after this little 6 points that he's amassed in his last 3 games, he has now joined Jiri Kulich, Isak Rosén, and Alexander Kizikov as point per game players amongst the Sabres prospect stable. So just 4 guys right now this season are firing at a point per game clip. And Matteo Costantini, surprisingly, is one of them. So he's in good company there with some of those names, some of those, more prominent Sabres prospects for sure. But really nice development to see Costantini get off to a good start there with the transfer into Western Michigan. Had a tough go last year when he was part of the North Dakota program. So now that he's with the Broncos, by the way, they come in at number 12 on the latest NCAA D1 poll. And they have a big one this week. It's an unranked team, but a conference set against unranked St. Cloud State. So we'll see if Constantini can keep it going. And lastly, this week, just want to offer a quick note on Ethan Miedema up in Kingston of the OHL. Talked last week about the Frontenacs getting a new bench boss, with former Belleville Senators head coach Troy Mann taking over in Kingston, and talked about the coaching change, hopefully maybe being a lever that could get Miedema back on track, since he's been going through an 8-game gold route and hasn't been putting up the points after getting off to a really hot start upon return from Buffalo. And happy to report that Miedema came out on Friday and had a really nice assist where he showed some patience and got around a defenseman, slid a nice cross-crease pass over to a line mate for a goal. And then he later picked up the game-winning goal in a contest, a 4-2 win over Barrie, showed off his NHL caliber release in that, picked up the game's first star, and along the way picked up his 100th OHL point. So wanted to call that out. Good to see him get going. Ended his 8-game gold route, picked up his 100th point, picked up the game's first star. So nice milestone for Miedema. And now, so at the 15-game mark, Miedema has 5 goals and 11 points. And you got to just see him use that release more. I think that's going to be the next kind of big component for his development. When you go back and you look at Miedema last year in his draft year, he literally was right on the money with 1 shot on goal per game. And a guy with that shooting skill, he should be getting 2.5, 3 shots on goal per game on average. So we want to see that as the next stage of his development. Right now, he has 17 shots on goal through his 15 games that he's played. Need to see that ramp up more, and we think he will. He has the club in the bag to do it. I think Troy Mann will find ways to get Miedema in better positions, and he should succeed and start leveraging that really nice quick release that he has more often. So we'll be tracking that. Other than that, everyone, I think that's it. Covered some ground here. Jiri Kulich's been shredding. Topias Leinenen's back in action. We have some international play this week with Wahlberg and Ostlund, and also maybe Maxim Sturbach, by the way. Sturbach did not suit up on Saturday for Michigan State. He could be joining his team for this Five Nations event. It would be kind of odd for that to happen, to be honest, but I thought it was peculiar that he wasn't in the lineup on Saturday for Michigan State. Coach Nightingale there is not talking about injuries a lot, so it's really hard to say if it's an injury or if he is joining his team. Usually you don't see guys go over for to Europe in the middle of the season. You know, they'll go away for World Juniors, and that's what's going to happen here in December. So I'd be very surprised if Sturbach shows up for the Slovaks. But either way, we'll be watching that. But really excited for some international hockey this week. And yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, covered a lot of ground. As always, appreciate everyone tuning in on YouTube and downloading the podcast every week. We'll do it again next week. See you then.